war is now starting to break out. We've got conflict really revving up across the Holy Cosmos. We understand now the reasons why Nero is such a problem to have like in charge. He doesn't actually think at all about the people, like to any degree, even from the standpoint as like little living beings within his empire. It's more of just numbers within his empire, and then whatever the dice tell him, that's what he's going with. Well, the chapter begins more like more just general fodder soldiers. Characters are taken out, whether they're shooting with guns, using their ether powers or what. Like even when the air unit guys get in, Shiki just flies up and starts no-diffing these guys. Like these are just nobody fodder. Like the characters are having no problem wrecking these guys and building up stuff for the next arc. And I really liked some of the moments just in general with Shiki, where you have like the first part where the big ship comes in and Goodwin is like jumping onto it and throwing it, and Shiki's just surprised from the sheer physical force of him, because we don't have a lot of brute-like characters like that in Eden Zero. There's not a lot of just really physically strong characters. For the most part, most of their powers are more flexible, but they don't focus on like heavy, just outright damage. Putting big physical numbers onto things, and we're starting to see that obviously with this dude. We got it with Xenolith, and then with Elsie and Justice, but like none of the main cast are really that crazy heavy hitters. Like Shiki can apply some large amounts of damage with grab manipulation, but at the same time he also isn't like, he's not that physically strong by himself, both in his own muscular strength but also in his general durability. Like he's not set to be like a very durable guy. But after that point, like you actually got a really nice moment where the rest of the Eden Zero, they're doing their own thing. They're also sweeping through these guys. These are nobodies. Like these are just characters that exist so the cast can beat up on. Jin looking really cool in this chapter. I like Jin in more like the leaner outfits, because his whole space cyborg ninja dude always looking badass. But I think the more thin sets for him ends up putting more emphasis on the whole wind ninja aspect, but he's still looking pretty jacked. Like he's got way bigger arms than when he was introduced. But then Goodwin takes note. Obviously they're part of the Eden Zero, and they're saying you're part of the guys that beat Drac and Joe, one of the Rathion Says Galacta. And that's a big thing that I'm glad was noted and brought up, just from the fact that it's like, yeah, like Nero being one of the Galactica, somebody of his stature is taken down. It's very important that like these characters like take note of like who did it, and in this case the ones who did it are directly in the main cast, that being Shiki and stuff. So Shiki's also getting credit where I think he deserves some credit, having to do with taking down Drac and Joe. So here we're getting some people that I'm hoping are gonna be like, yeah, that's some pretty impressive stuff, my dude, and maybe like hype him up, knowing that if he's got the potential to take down one of the Galactica, then they actually have a much better set of putting some faith in him. And granted, it is important to note that Drac and Joe was nerfed after they ended up destroying his machine, so he was at a much weaker status than he would be normally. But at the same time, like that doesn't fully take away what they did. Like they're still able to contend with them, and like the Element 4, like, and everybody, like they did fine fighting them. It was really just Drac and Joe as an individual, and granted he is the boss character, but if they were able to figure out a way to weaken him to do it, like that still counts as a victory. And I personally don't think that Nero is going to be as powerful of a fighter as Drac and Joe. I think that he is just on the same level of difficulty in like fighting in general. Because like Drac and Joe is strong, but he's like, his big things are like he's got a lot of connections, he's got a lot of people that he can get favors from, work with, and whatnot. So that combined with his own broken ability, with the alchemy, being able just to mess with things at a atomic level and whatnot, of it just completely changing its whole structure. He is a very dangerous guy across the board. And if he's going to be equal to Nero, I would assume things like Nero's fleet and everything we're taking. If Nero's as outright strong as Drac and Joe, maybe he's as strong like in raw stats, but like his powers aren't just as good. Like maybe it is. Well, no, because I was going to say water, but it's like that's not really his thing. His thing is the dice. it would make a lot of sense if it's like he just is able to see in the future and figure things out with the dice, or at least what the dice tell him, and then he has just this large amount of forces and resources that make him such a danger, which would also separate him opponent-wise. Like, obviously, he's not a power level-based guy at that point. It really comes down to just how they can fight him and how they can get close to him and whatnot, whereas, like, Shura seems to be more of the physical fighter side of things. But furthering from that, I really like Shiki's response to it. Like, hey, you beat Drac and Joe, and he just has a big goofy smile on him. He's just happy about it. And following after that point, we get more of that kid. We get that kid with the weird line mark on his eye. I'm really curious as to what this kid's plans are. Like, what, not like what this kid's plans are, what Mishima's plans with this kid are. Because it's like, he's in the last chapter, and he showed him again in this chapter. So, like, what exactly is, like, what is Mishima gonna do with him? Does he have, like, a bigger role in the future, or what? And there's, like, a noting from these guys are saying, like, how many people died during this whole thing. And they're saying 16 were killed by him. But that's not really entirely for this. This is a war. There's no good guys or bad guys. And I like that comment on it, because that's really true. It really comes down to which side comes out on top at the end of who's going to be the deciding person of who is right and wrong. But he's like, every time millions, tens of millions of people die, freedom really is lost, and that's why he hates this empire. All they do, like, is they just, use might to take over, and then they just oppress people with heavy taxes and censorship on them, and they just take whatever they want and dwindle everything down to fractions of what they were. And that's why he hates the empire. It's really, they force people into war, or they just kind of take over and do their own thing regardless, and it always just ends up negatively. And I thought that was a really good part for Goodwin's character, just to start in. I thought that was really nice, but he's like, when the war is over, let's get some drinks together, and he's just trying to be a little bit more friendly and, like, more appreciative of knowing that when you go into war, you don't really know who you're, like, the details of who you're fighting. And I don't mean that from, like, the standpoint of, like, your enemy country, but, like, you don't know the person you're going to be up on the battlefield against. You don't know what their story is. You don't know why they're fighting. You don't know exactly what brought them into this whole situation. There's a lot of variables in there that, they get lost in the, the heat of war. And I thought that Goodwin had a really good moment when it came to that in this chapter. And then Shiki too. Shiki obviously seeing them as friends. He's getting, doing his thing, getting a little touchy and getting a little huggy all over members of Oasis. And I mean, they're not going to stop him at that point. Like, Shiki's just a very emotional guy. He's very affectionate. So them at the point where he sees them as friends, he's just going to be doing his thing. And then it goes over to Narrow 66. We see Shura with all these girls by the pool. I wonder if they're aware of the fact that, like, if he just feels like it, he'll just kill, any of them at the drop of a hat. Like, definitely one of those things. I'd be really curious to know, like, if these women are aware of that at all, because otherwise, I don't know if they'd want to be around him. Like, that would be information that, like, if somebody stuck around, they would have to be kind of crazy. But I don't know. And then he's hanging out with like Lyra and what's the guy's name, Nice or whatever from the Oceans. They're just doing their thing, hanging out, chilling, getting ready for war. And then after that point, which is where the big meat of this chapter really starts in, is you have the Union Federation army just showing up, and the Shura's like, oh, the government's army. It's a good way to kill time. I'm curious as to that statement, because one, Eraser's there, and Eraser's one of the Erasion States Interstellar, so he should be on level with a Galactica. We don't know exactly what his abilities are. He might be a raw power level type kind of character, might be a tricky kind of character with his ability. We don't really know the specifics, but he should, combat-wise, he should at the very least be very, like, high-skilled, high-ranked. And if it was just, like, all these fodder dudes, that'd be one thing. I'd be like, okay, yeah, they can take these guys. There's just a bunch of ships. As far as we've seen, just fodder ships are literally just masses of metal and then something, with maybe some guns on it or something. Nothing crazy. Whatever Eraser's on is probably what's going to be the bigger one. And, Shura's got his own numbers and his own forces and whatnot. We know that. So he should be fine against them. It's really just down to, like, the bigger pieces that I'm curious about. What's going to happen between Shura and Eraser? What exactly is Eraser going to do in order to combat Shura. And exactly how is the conflict between them going to go, given that like Shura is like setting himself up to deal with Ziggy, and then obviously like Shiki has to come into play. There's a lot of pieces around Shura that like it's really odd to have Eraser come into the scene. So what he's gonna do, again, a lot of curiosity around. I really want to know just how he plays in the next couple chapters, because we know he was on the way and doing stuff, and so is Jaguar. Jaguar is the one I'm really excited for, because I mentioned he's one of the guys that I've really liked the design of him, and I've wanted to see what exactly he does, especially when I found out like he's of this high rank with the Interstellar and stuff. So once we get to that, I really just can't wait to see some of the displays of abilities. That's one of my favorite parts of when you get new characters, especially like big hype characters, ones that aren't just gonna be in one chapter. Big people like this, to start to actually see what they're made of, to see what they're capable of, and to really just see how they really just dispense all of their their moments on screen. I'm very excited for that, and to see how Eraser to a degree, Shura to a degree. I mean, Shura's like Eraser's is going to be one of those ones where it's cool. I mean, just in general, because I think he is cool. Like there's nothing really like heavy to go off when it comes to his character, but at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, he still has a cool aura by him by default, just from his rank and his the strangeness of his name, and probably whatever his ability is going to be is weird. But him and Shura, like Shura's going to be, I would assume, similar to Ziggy and Shiki, but his own style. I think they're both going to be cool. Jaguar is where my big hype is. I really want to see what Jaguar can do. Like he's been on my list since his introduction. It was him and Justice were like the big ones, because Justice, I really wanted to see how Mishima was going to take his character abilities, just because I knew that it was going to be some way in the concept of like how Jalal and Sieg fought, but it was going to be in a different style. And obviously we found out stuff like how it worked with Starbrain and whatnot. But like Jaguar still hasn't been one of the ones shown, and he was the other character that I've had just on the back burner waiting for since he was brought in. So hoping on that. I'm hoping he's got like this really badass like beastly fighter type ether gear. Like I'm hoping I'm kind of hoping something not like victories, but something kind of more in the lines of like how Elfman has like Beast Soul, or maybe Jaguar can become like these terrifying creatures from like throughout the cosmos. I imagine it'd just be like essentially Takeover, but like an alien version of Beast Soul. I think that would it'd be really cool in general concept. Like Beast Soul was one of those ones. Like just Takeover magic in general was one of those magics in Fairy Tail. It'd been around for so long, but we never saw a ton of it. Like the most we saw was Mirajane. So like seeing an alien version, maybe similar to Elfman's on a Jaguar, I think would be like a win-win scenario, both in concept, and it would be cool to see that style put on like a bigger, more kind of like story. I don't want to say like story valued character, but more of like he's just gonna get more of a percentage of the screen time when they show up. Because like at the end of the day, Mirajane was like popular, but she was like close to a side character within the main cast. Like she was like somebody that could sometimes kind of like Gagio, but like kind of get interchanged in some areas. And Elfman was like that for a bit, but you never knew with him he was gonna maybe get a spotlight, end an arc or not. Whereas like Jaguar is a big character in his title. We know he's going into a big battle, and I would assume he at the very least would get like a full first display whenever he shows up and starts doing stuff. That like a full chapter of just him doing his thing, showing off whatever his ether gear is. I really like the idea though of like essentially alien Beast Soul, but I don't know. I'll be cool probably with whatever Mishima gives him, because I assume whatever it'll be will be really cool. I mean, he's got those slick eyes, and maybe he's a freaking space dragon slayer or something. I don't know. Either way, he's badass. So, anyway, other than that, no, comment below. Thumbs up the video, friend, the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But on that, appreciate everybody. Sorry, subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.